Welcome to the Pelican Brief, everybody. I'm Jordan Salama, and what an exciting show do we have today. He's the author of various well-known young adult and children's novels such as The Wave and the Helped I'm Trapped series, as well as the recent critically acclaimed novels Fallout and No Place. We are honored to have him with us. Please welcome award-winning author Todd Strasser to the show. Mr. Strasser, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure.
Now, as many of you already know at home, we taped this interview last week. However, due to a computer crash, we were not able to recover the first 10 minutes of the interview, unfortunately. That's why I'm so grateful, even more grateful, to have Mr. Strasser in on a Skype call for the start of the interview. Don't worry, he'll be in the studio with us a bit later. But first, I want to talk to him about his day with the Pelham Middle School students. You spent the whole day with them. They were so excited to see you. How was your day?
Oh, it was great. The kids were incredibly receptive and interested, and they asked great questions, and it's a very good time. You know, I really enjoyed it.
And what you did with them, I understand, is you had an assembly and also some creative writing seminars?
Yeah. So the assembly is really going over the writing process and my own development as a writer, and just sort of stuff like that. And then the writing workshops, we actually work on writing techniques in some of them. In others, we work on the structure of stories. So it depends on the grade level, but we covered a lot of territory, yeah.
That's awesome. And you do this a lot, I know, right? I understand that you do this often.
Well, I do visit a lot of schools, and I do presentations like this in a lot of places. Yeah, I even got to go to Lima, Peru this year and do it at an international school in Lima. I can't say most of mine are international, but I do a lot, yeah.
All right, and what is it that you enjoy about coming to schools and working with students?
Well, it gets me out of the house, which is always good. You know, writing is a very solitary occupation, and if you spend a lot of time alone, you feel like getting out. I do it because it helps promote my own books. I do it because I love reading and writing and think it's really important, and I want to share my love of reading and writing with students and let them know that it's incredibly important and is both to their financial lives, their successes, their personal lives, and in every way, shape, and form. So I just feel like I want to share that with people.
And that is so true. I'm sure you were definitely an inspiration for so many of our budding young student writers in Pelham to meet with you.
Well, I hope so.
Great. Let's go a little bit into your life as a writer and your career. When did you first realize that you wanted to write for a living?
Well, for a living, I think I was in college, and the last thing I ever thought I could do for a living was be a writer. It was a hobby, something I just did, the way some people play music or draw or play sports. It never occurred to me I could actually do it professionally, but I sort of ran out of options. I tried all the things I was supposed to do, medicine, law, whatever, and nothing was taking. So finally I thought, well, I'd try to give this writing thing an attempt, and I guess it worked.
And where did you go from there? From, I don't know, I guess you were in high school or college when you realized that this was something you wanted to do for a living.
Well, it's very, I know in some cases people just sit around and write for years and they show a manuscript and they're bestsellers. For me, it was a very, very gradual, step by step, literally from the college newspaper to doing some freelance work for the college public relations office to finding a job on a very small newspaper way out in the middle of nowhere to beginning to freelance to larger newspapers like the Times, writing some magazine articles, working on a novel, and finally having a manuscript and finding an agent who would represent it. And it was just a very gradual, slow, I guess you could say, ascent. And I just got enough positive reinforcement at each step to keep going, I think.
Of course, that's how it works most of the time, and I guess anything, right? I also thought this was interesting. While you were starting out as a journalist and as a writer, you ran a fortune cookie company.
Well, yeah. I tried the corporate thing with the newspaper world. I know you don't think of that as corporate, but it was a job. You had to show up on time, a regular number of days a week, and then in advertising. And then I sold my first book, and I wanted to keep writing, but my first book got a $3,000 advance, which wasn't enough to support me. And I had a friend, and he and I had been talking for years about doing something with fortune cookies. And we finally came up with an idea, and it worked. Dr. Wingtip Shoe's fortune cookies. In the late 1970s and early 80s, you would have found them in little takeout containers with a gold label in various gift shops and candy stores and all sorts of places all over the place in New York. And then eventually, sorry, somebody's, hold on. Sorry, you would have found them in New York, and what happened is that people, salesmen from around the country would come to New York to sell items of their own and see the cookies and ask if they could sell them. And the next thing I knew, I literally had salespeople, not just my own cookies, but selling all kinds of gag gifts all over the country. And so it was, ironically, all I wanted to do was be a best-selling writer. Right. And my first bestseller, believe it or not, I walked into a store on Lexington Avenue just before Christmas, and this woman who ran the store said to me, "Todd, you've got a bestseller." And I thought, a fortune cookie is my bestseller. Not quite what I had in mind.
Listen, it's writing, isn't it? It's
exactly. It involves writing. It was fun.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know that there is something a little bit quirky about this company, the types of fortunes that you wrote.
Slightly risque sayings, jokes, double entendres, nothing you couldn't bring home to mom. She'd get a chuckle.
Of course. Okay, can you tell us a little bit more about your background and how it influenced your stories or your writing style?
Well, I think if you're referring to my own struggles as a reader, I was not a great student. I had struggles. I had learning issues. Back in those days, we didn't really call it learning disabilities. It wasn't really analyzed to the degree it is now. You were just, you weren't working up to your potential. You were, I can't remember what the phrase was, but, you just weren't working up to your potential. So I struggled. I thought I was trying as hard as I could, but stuff I just wasn't getting. I got to the end of third grade, and my parents were called to school by the principal, who said that I was going to have to be held back. I couldn't read well enough to go into fourth grade, and my parents weren't incredibly surprised, but they asked if I could go to a reading tutor for the summer between third and fourth grade. Maybe I could learn to read well enough to get into fourth grade. And the principal agreed. He said, "All right, we'll wait till the beginning of fourth grade to see how Todd's reading." And so I went to a reading tutor during the summer, and she had a very interesting way of getting me to read. She put me in a kitchen. She gave me a book. She opened a pantry. Inside were cookies, cupcakes, donuts. She said, "Todd, here's the deal. You read, you eat." I thought, I can do this. I did this. The theme of reading and eating, whether it's fortune cookies or whatever, it has pervaded my life. But anyway, I spent the summer reading and eating and reading and eating. By the end of the summer, I'd gained 4 pounds, but I was also reading just well enough to get into fourth grade. And even today, I am a slow reader. Just the way the brain is wired. I listen to a lot of books on CDs and on various electronic devices. I do read books also, but I like to listen to them, and that's fine.
I think it's important to emphasize that it's not a terrible thing to be a slow reader. What advice would you have for some struggling readers, maybe in elementary school or even middle school nowadays?
Well, I don't think I have anything unique to say except that you've got to, kids have to be started on what they enjoy, not necessarily on what their teachers think they have to read or their parents. I remember getting really into the Ian Fleming James Bond books, which I guess were okay at the time, not exactly great literature. But from there, I went to John le Carré, who wrote The Looking Glass War, The Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. I mean, who was truly one of, I think, Great Britain's great post-war novelists. So you work your way up in all these areas, and it's the same with reading, I think.
And did this have any impact on your choice to go into an audience of young adults and children?
Well, I wouldn't say it was a choice. I think that's where I wound up. Now, I think it's interesting interesting to me at least, to wonder if because I was a struggling reader, whether my books, whether that has something to do with the fact that my books are often chosen for groups of struggling readers to read today. Just yesterday, I was doing a Skype with a class of struggling readers in Madison, Wisconsin. And so it seems that that's my bailiwick.
Mm-hmm. And we are going to talk about some of your most well-known works, and this is a great segue to go back into the studio to the portion of our conversation that we have down. So I want to thank you so much for coming in on Skype. We're going to be right back with a few factoids about Mr. Strasser while we transition back into our studio interview. So thank you, Mr. Strasser. So we have a lot of your books out here. We have the Help on Crap series, The Wave, which was your most successful novel. But which one would you say was your favorite to write?
Well, my favorite, I think, was a more recent book called Fallout. It's very autobiographical, the story of my life growing up with a fallout shelter during the Cold War leading up to the Cuban Missile Crisis. And a part of the book is very autobiographical, and I'd never really written anything that was autobiographical before. And once I finished it, I found myself very much attached to it, I think because it's the story of myself as opposed to a story I've made up. So that's a book I'm pretty attached to at this point.
And what was it like for you to go through that, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and then to recreate it?
Well, it really brought back a lot of memories, a lot of things I hadn't thought about how much this whole crisis, the whole threat of a nuclear war pervaded our lives. It was in the comic books I read, it was on TV, Rocky and Bullwinkle with Natasha Fatal and Boris Badenov, these Russian spies. They weren't called Russian spies,
right.
And they were always setting off bombs. And we really, I don't think I had realized what an impact this threat of nuclear war hanging over us was until I began to write the book and to once again relive those days.
Well, that's definitely a great one. I know it's been acclaimed by the critics all around.
It's done.
It's got a lot of success. But could we go back in time and talk about The Wave, which
Sure.
you actually published under a pen name?
Well, yes, yeah. I had been writing for a long time another book, and it was the beginning of my career. And then my publisher actually asked me to write The Wave. We think that writers come up with all these ideas themselves, but sometimes publishers come up with ideas and find the writer they think is the right writer for the job. And that was the case with The Wave. So it turned out I wrote The Wave pretty quickly, and then I had two books coming out at the same time. And my publisher said, "You know what, Todd? You're a new author, and not that many people have heard of you, and we're worried if we put two books out at the same time." And there was a time constraint on The Wave. It had to come out. Maybe you should use another name. So that was okay with me, and I thought, well, Todd is similar to the word for dead. Strasser in German kind of means street in dead in German. Mm-hmm. So anyway, Dead Street in French is Mort Rue. So I decided to write it under the name of Mort Rue.
That's a very interesting.
Well, the strange thing is that the book is basically required reading in Germany. Mm-hmm. So my books, as a result, are pretty popular in Germany, and they will not publish books by Todd Strasser. All the books in German have to be by Morton Rue, because that's the name they know me. So when I actually go over there, maybe once every other year to promote a new book, I have to become Morton Rue, sign Morton Rue's name, and just answer to Morton. Yeah.
When did the change to Todd Strasser for The Wave happen in the United States, though? Or did it ever come out as Morton Rue?
No, it did. In the beginning, it came out as Morton Rue, and I guess it was a couple of books later that my publisher thought it would be best if in the United States it was by Todd Strasser to sort of help with the sales of the other books as well.
All right, and there's so much more that we could talk about, but let's talk about your most recent book.
Oh,
about
okay.
It's No Place.
Yes, yes.
So the plot is, it's about a senior in high school
Yes.
who goes from, stability and financial, he's well off.
Yeah.
But then he goes into homelessness.
Yes.
So what about homelessness? What made that a topic that you wanted to bring to this audience of young adults?
I just, what? I'd say that I live in Larchmont and in a world of people who really aren't probably going to become homeless. And yet there was a tremendous amount of homelessness after the Great Recession. And I wanted to write about that and about what the experience might be like. And I was just toying with the idea, and I was actually doing a Skype with a school in Florida. And I was talking to a group of kids about some of my other books. And towards the end of the Skype, I said, so, by the way, do you guys know any homeless kids? Any homeless kids? And the whole class said, no, there's nobody homeless. And then the class ended, the Skype was still going on, and the teacher came up to me. Actually, the kids were still leaving the class, filing out, and the teacher came up and said, there are 3 kids in this class that are homeless.
Oh my goodness.
And I suddenly realized, it's not like if you're homeless, you're going to go out and tell your friends, hey, I'm homeless, And it was a big problem, and there was a lot of tent cities. There still are, actually. And I just thought it was something that was being missed, that a lot of kids weren't thinking about the fact that this happened. And then the more I read about it, the more I realized that this is the grapes of wrath all over again. I mean, there's so many similarities. People losing their homes, people living in cars, people living in tents between the Great Depression and the Great Recession. And that became sort of an issue to me. Why are we reliving this? Why is this happening again? And so that became sort of a theme of the book. Homelessness, the history repeating itself, and things like that.
So really, you want younger students to recognize then the issue.
This happens, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I write different kinds of books. Obviously, the Help I'm Trapped books are kind of funny, but then there are serious issues that I feel are important to write about, and I guess the ones that I feel the most important about are the ones that I take up.
All right, and when you feel so impassioned about a topic, it really makes for such a great read. No Place and Fallout are both available now in your local library or bookstore. Stay tuned because we have more with Mr. Strasser and some viewer questions when we come back on the Pelican Brief. Hi everyone, I'm Jordan Salama, creator and host of the Pelican Brief. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @BriefsOn. Get your briefs on for updates on guests, showtimes, and much, much more. And as always, thanks for watching the Pelican Brief. Welcome back to the Pelican Brief, everybody. With me today is best-selling young adult and children's author Todd Strasser. Mr. Strasser, I hope you're enjoying our time with us.
Oh,
Thank
yeah,
you
it's
again
been
for
great.
coming.
Thanks.
As we mentioned, you spent the day with the middle school students, but I know there are a lot of curious high school students who definitely have a lot of questions for you, and we have a segment now that we'd like to do with viewer questions, students who had something they want to say and they want maybe some advice. So the first question is from Hannah M. Her question is, how do you go about beginning a book once you have the idea for the plot?
Well, the first thing I do is I outline the story. I really have to know how the book is going to end before I can begin it, because everything that goes into a book must lead to the ending. Sometimes I'll have a character I just love, but there really isn't a reason for that character to be there. That character has to go. So I outline pretty extensively, and sometimes the story will actually change while I'm writing it, but then I just change the outline to the new ending. But I feel that I must outline. I'm doing that with the book right now. And so that's the first step. Yeah.
All right. Next question is from Emily X. She was wondering which novel of yours, or I guess a scene
Wait,
from
Emily X?
Emily X. Emily
We
U.
know who you are, Emily X. I mean, why even bother? I mean, how many Emily X's are there?
Well, she's a freshman, and she has a good question for you. This is actually one of my favorites. Which novel of yours or scene from a novel was the hardest for you to write, and why?
Actually, in Fallout. When I was growing up, my father had this bomb shelter. Well, our family did. And it was a cause of a tremendous amount of stress for me. Should I stay in school if a war happens during the day? Should I run home? Will I get in trouble? What if I get home and all our neighbors are there? Yeah. And I actually write a story, part's autobiographical, but the part that's fictional is about this small fallout shelter, and 10 people have crammed into it. It's really only built for 4. Those were difficult scenes to write, just what's going on in this tiny little fallout shelter with 10 people crammed inside. And I found it quite stressful to write, yeah.
Was that difficult? Obviously it was difficult stylistically, but was it difficult emotionally as
Yes,
well?
no, that's what I'm saying. It
Yeah.
was difficult emotionally because I was reliving a lot of the anxieties and fears that I'd had as a 12-year-old as the Cuban Missile Crisis approached, and we all thought there might be a cause for a nuclear war.
Mm-hmm. That must have been very, very difficult. But let's go.
It was interesting.
Let's go to a lighter note then. This is William S. What is your favorite genre of literature?
To read? Well, I love a lot of nonfiction. I read a lot of biographies and just whatever interests me. I love science fiction and good literary fiction. Those would be my areas that I enjoy the most.
And do you write, I don't know, obviously not for publication, but would you write any other types of genres of literature?
Over the years, I've done just about everything. Not always well. I've kind of figured out that I'm not very good at horror. I'm not very good at romance. I'm pretty good at realistic fiction. I'm okay, with humor, or at least I was. And my next book, The Beast of Crustacea, is actually my first science fiction adventure novel. And that's been really exciting because it's a whole new genre for me. Mm-hmm. And I guess we'll wait till the critics decide whether it's any good or not.
When is that coming out?
It comes out in August.
Okay, that's very exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's actually very nerve-wracking because so much depends on whether the critics are going to like it or not.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's move on. And this is Pilar V. What aspects?
Pilar V?
Pilar. Pilar is her first name.
Oh, okay. I thought it was like a larvae,
No, not a larvae.
Like it's going to become a butterfly. Then it'll be pea butterfly. Yeah.
We have some interesting names here.
I'm getting that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So Pilar was wondering, what aspects from your work do you want your readers to take away? The strongest messages. From what you're.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that the messages that run through most of my books have to do with independent thinking, with being compassionate, helping the underdog, things like that. Those seem to be the reoccurring storylines in my book. A lot of underdog stories in my books, and maybe because I was an underdog. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But those seem to be the ones that come through.
Okay, and let's get into the advice here because we are running out of time. Anais, there's another one. Anais L. asks, what is the best advice you have ever received about anything?
Well, about anything? Well, let's stick to writing.
Yeah, we'll stick to writing. Fine.
Write what you know, which is really important because it becomes very obvious when you're not writing about what you know. That was a pretty important one. Vary your sentence structure. Use red herrings when you're creating mysteries. Another good thing, I know this sounds ridiculous that I'm telling you, but somebody told me that when you're writing a mystery, always make sure that the whodunit character is brought under suspicion and then released. So that you've already considered this character and dismissed them for some reason so that it's a real surprise when they come back. So I thought that was a pretty good piece of advice. So those are just what's coming off the top of my head today.
Right, okay. And then that answers
Yes,
our last question from Ryan
Oh.
W., who said, what's your advice for a student who's interested in writing of any kind?
Well, in that case, I'd say always wait half an hour after you eat before you go swimming.
Okay, that's obviously it's
Yeah,
something
clearly.
that we all need to think about. Yeah. All right. Well, we could go on and on and on. Everybody has so many questions, but I know that you're a very busy man, and we can't thank you enough
Oh,
for
my
taking
pleasure.
the time out of your day to come visit our show. It really means a lot to us. We talked about your career, your day at Pelham, and most importantly, your advice to our student writers, and that's invaluable to them. Once again, I want to give a huge thanks to Mr. Todd Strasser for coming to our school, and of course, for coming on the program today. It was so great to speak with you and to learn from you. I'm Jordan Salama, and we'll see you next time on the Pelican Brief.
Sure. Hopefully, the Pelican Brief. So are these the Pelicans? Is
The Pelham Pelicans, yeah.
the Pelham Pelicans?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I know, it's like the movie and the book, but
Right. I'm just thinking the
Yeah, yeah.
Pelicans is the best. They couldn't be the Pelham Panthers.
Fear into the
Clearly.
Exactly.
opposing teams.
Exactly. The Pelican Panthers, Pythons.
Okay, Pelicans get pretty vicious.
yeah.
I think.
You don't want a pelican diving down.
No. Yeah. I surf, and once in a while, one will come crashing down near us, and it's always such a surprise when they're not going after us. They're going after fish. But what was that?